Hi, I'm Bert Hovander. Today I'm going to talk about putting biscuits on a bowl for crack repair. This is my Harbor Freight special, about 50 bucks worth. I made a special base for it. Where the blade comes out, sticks out about 7/8 of an inch from the wood here to give me a little bit of clearance. I'm flush on this one side, and the other side I needed some leverage for a knob to tighten what is my ball joint. First post I made was out of metal, and I just undercut it a little bit so that I get a little bit more motion to the ball joint, but that's not quite adequate. So I'm thinking about trying to reduce the amount of space in here. If I do that, I will have a lot more movement to it, and maybe just a straight post will work, and I'm going to experiment with that today. So my solution was to actually grab my tool rest, and I just stick it in my tool post, and I can come off of here, or I can come off the top with my ball joint, so I automatically have a 90-degree variant. You could easily make something like this out of wood. If you used a hardwood, I think it would be just fine for the amount of use it's going to get. You just kind of make a block center like that, drill some holes, stick your wood or pipe out, and you could easily make a T as well. So let me chuck this up and get ready to go. I want to place a biscuit across this crack. I don't want it totally perpendicular. I'd like it at a little bit of an angle, but the biscuit joiner needs to go at an angle off of perpendicular. Something within that range is what I'm looking for. And when I put this on my single post, the maximum I can get is about a 45-degree angle, which is not adequate. However, if I use my T-rest, I can do the 90 degrees from that so that I can do it perpendicularly and a little bit of an angle one way or the other, so that would be just perfect. But I'm going to see if I can remake this ball joint to be more flexible and use just a single post. That would be nice. So that's going to be the experiment today. Let's put a biscuit about here, and one at a different angle over here, something like that. And how about a third one down here? That could be straight across or whatever. Lock the spindle lock, and we're set to go for the first biscuit. Here we go. Just real quick in and out. So let's look at what we did. That's the biscuit, right? The joint that we're going to have there. And then I'll put one over here. Biscuit slot number 2. Oh, I made that one a bit off down this direction. That's okay. And we'll go for one more. Biscuit slot number 3. Here's the bowl with the biscuits epoxied in. I had forgotten that I had decided that I wouldn't epoxy biscuits anymore. Just use wood glue. Works just as well, and it's just easier to work with. Be sure your biscuits are loose enough in the slot to allow for the biscuit to swell a little bit with the wood glue is all. Well, I used to put it on the lathe like this and take my bowl gouge and just trim those biscuits off. And of course, then because of the different grain directions and whatnot, I chipped a chunk of the biscuit out, and so I had a big divot left over. Another problem to solve. So I suggest use a saw to cut them off, or just take a chisel and do it that way. Just work at it slowly. A chisel doesn't take all that long, really, and you can get down pretty close. That, you know, do whatever you can and get away with. I need to make some biscuits, so here is an example of a finished biscuit. How did I do it? Well, I started off by cutting a couple of biscuit holes in a piece of wood. I did one already, and here's the second one. So now I have 2 biscuit holes. And on the table saw, I'm going to cut this part off here to expose this, and then I'll be able to see the exact diameter and the fit of the biscuit in the slot. Okay, so that exposes this biscuit slot here, so I can put it in there and see how well it fits very easily. It also, and I cut some slats, and with this one I'll see, oh, okay, it fits in there nicely. You want a little bit of a loose fit. You add some glue, the wood's going to swell. So now I have a gauge. I know how thick to cut the slats on the table saw, and I can see the arc that's there, and I can figure out and calculate the radius on that. And so my next step would be to make a holder for the biscuit, so I could cut it to the right shape. So I just sort of arbitrarily put a hole in this, and then I taped a biscuit on it to do it, and then when I got it in the right spot, I put this paper buckle clamp on it with a little piece of wood here to so I had a little more pressure. I placed a glued a piece of sandpaper on here so we have a non-skid surface, and then I take it over to my disc sander and I'll show you that. At the disc sander, I knew that I wanted to make the end of my biscuit maker the same shape as the biscuit slot. Well, so I put a pin in a piece of plywood at kind of a random. I left it back far enough so that when I put it on, I could keep cutting away at this, keep cutting away until I got it closer and closer and closer to fit the slot on the that the biscuit maker makes. Now, the other important thing would be to not clamp it on the table, but to clamp it to the miter gauge. And in doing so, that allows you to utilize different spots on the sanding disc rather than stay only in one position. Now that I can make the final shape of the biscuit, I needed an easy way to rough it out. So I'm going to the table saw. I didn't want to put a pin in the metal table, so I took a piece of plywood which was oversized, went ahead and kind of laid it out as I wanted, took it to the table saw, squared it up, cut a curve in it, and also cut some slats of wood which I glued underneath. I glued them underneath and did that on the saw table itself so it would fit perfectly. Then after it was dried, I just lifted up the edge, cut it off, and went to the table saw and reduced it to a more convenient size. Then came back, put it back on. I still need to put a pin in it. I haven't done that yet, right? So I stuck a pin in a random piece of wood, put my biscuit maker on that pin, adjusted it so that it was in the right spot, clamped it to the table, took the table off, drilled the hole, put in the pin, and I was ready then to rough out biscuits. So to make a biscuit, I'll put my stock in there, make sure I'm making a full biscuit, set it on the post, turn on the bandsaw, that much is done. The bandsaw was set to cut it about a 32nd of an inch too big, so when I come over to the disc center, I just have a little bit to remove. Go ahead, set it on the post, turn it on, and we're done. So let's check the fit. Just about perfect. I like that. To make the ball joint, first thing I did was take the plate off, cut a square to fit the plate, use it to put some holes in it, and then I cut two other rectangular pieces the same width as the square but 3 inches longer. I use a drill press all the time. If you don't have a drill press, here is a couple of quick ideas. Simply drill a straight hole through a piece of wood, and then start your hole, put it through the wood, find that bringing the wood down, and then you're held straight up and down, and go ahead and drill. Well, how do you drill a straight hole in a piece of wood without a drill press? Well, here are two ways. We're going to put a hole in this piece of wood here. I've just stacked a couple of pieces of 2x that are straight. Find that little, use both pieces of 2x as a guide and drill straight on down. You've got it. Or if you have a table saw, cut yourself a little kerf, and then just hold it up there, put it in the kerf. You can take a piece of wood against it, hold it there, and then drill straight down. And then you'll have a piece like this that you can use portably, bring it anywhere, and drill a very straight hole. Okay, at the drill press, what I want to do is drill 4 holes perfectly spaced here, 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 and here. And to do that, I've set this up so it's going to be very easy and kind of a mindless task. I clamp a piece of wood on here, and I have this piece here. I brought it down so that I'm centered on this piece here. So now I want to put a hole in here, move this over, bring that down, and now I can just drill holes like crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that now I can, if I chose, I could use those 4 screw holes. I could put screw it on this way, this way, this way. It'll always be centered. And so what I want to do actually now is to do the same, put those drill holes, because this is going to be my plate for centering on the lathe. And now I want to put, let's see, I've got to figure this out again. Okay, there we go. And so I want to be able to screw this onto this plate here. And this is how Blow away the dust. So that gives me the 3 holes. 4th hole, I'll go like this and use this as my guide to make that 4th hole. I skipped a step. When I drill the hole, hit my first hole here, I come up and I'll flip it over and I'll come down again. If it hits the hole, it's proof to myself that I'm good, and then that's when I'll cut all the rest of the holes. This is my prototype, so I just used some junk plywood. I will get about 120 degrees rotation or so, which is more than what I need, so I'm going to be happy with that. This is just going to be using a single post. So, because I want the bowl close to the edge, that means that everything has to be off center, and that means it's a 1.5 inch off center. So I put a little divot, 1.5 inch. Going to use my cone center, bring it up. That centers that on the lathe. Now I need to fix this piece to the lathe. I'm going to use that little block of wood I cut and drill a couple of holes. Okay, and then I'll put some, I'll use that and put some screws in, and I'll be back with you in just a minute. So I want to make a little hollow, not very big. I have drawn the circle, so I know the parameters, and I'm going to go ahead and use the bowl gouge to make that little hollow. Okay, I think that'll about do it, but of course, if you know me, I'm gonna cheat. So here it comes. I made this years ago to make hollows and half hemispheres. So here we go. I can't help it. What can I say? Grabbing too much meat. Let's back it off. So now let's make this piece. This is going to be cut on both sides. And so we're going to start with this circle, and I'll use the bowl gouge to get it started. It's just easier. Okay, let's bring up my other little jig. All right, I think I'm ready now. Here we go. Advance it in a little bit more. Okay, I think that's probably good for that side. And since I made all my holes with the idea of a mirror image, I can flip it over and use the same holes. Okay, time to shift over to my little jig and just top it off. Let's clean up the other side now. Okay, I believe we're done with that part. Now it's time to make a sphere, but first let me hone my bowl gouge real fast here. Okay, let's just get the rough parameters here. I want my sphere to be about 3 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and waste 1/4 of an inch out here just cause, and so I'm going to bring my tape in 1/4 of an inch, mark it at 1.5 inches. I'll mark it at 3.25. That's what I'm going to do. So actually it's this line here that I want, and let's go ahead and make those all the way around. Okay, I should have made that line, but I did. So what I'm going to do is just rough turn the cylinder with my bowl gouge, and then I will start using my sphere jig. Let's part down to that line. Okay, I've left a ton of meat in there. That's just fine. Let's clear this out. Okay, since I'm going to use my sphere jig on it, that is close enough. That's really crude, but it doesn't matter. Fact is, if your ball doesn't end up to be a perfect shape, it really isn't going to affect how it works for this ball joint. It won't matter at all. Okay, I'm going to bring up my sphere jig, and I'll be right back. The sphere jig is all set up. I have lined my bowl gouge up with the center line. I set my depth stop so that I can only go so deep, and it's all secure, ready to go. So I'm going to back it out and start. I'm going probably 1200 or so, I don't know. Taking too much, back it out a little bit. It's important to make a very light pass, especially as you're getting down to the diameter that you want. Okay, what do we have for diameter? That should be about 3.25. Let's see what this says here. It says yes, just a little over 3.25. So I want to take off what? That means 1/8 of an inch, right? Okay, let's go ahead and start doing that. Before I continue on, I think I better drill my hole in here. I should have done that a lot earlier. So I'm going to put a little piece of wood in behind the jig against the lathe. It's tight so that I can remove it and then put it back in to the exact spot. Time to drill a hole to fit the pipe insert, which will fit over the tool post. Then I'll have a set screw through it. Speed is about 400 RPM. It's 1 3/8 inches. Let's make sure it'll fit. Got it deep enough? Oh, perfect. Just perfect. I'm going to do a light pass over the whole thing and then finish shaping it. If you've noticed, I can pull back on the wood. There's enough give that it can pull it back about 1/16 of an inch, which allows me to pull back, come into my cut, let it move in, make my cut, and when I finish my cut I can pull it back away so that the cutter doesn't leave a little ding in it. Okay, that's good. What I'm doing is simply rotating the turret 25 degrees. And then I'm going to put the screw back down in. And now I'm going to shift tools from a fairly blunt cutter that I was using to one that's sharpened at about 25 degrees. Let's see if I can put that where you can see it. Kinda. And when I put that through at this angle, I'll be able to do the back side. Next time I'll use a little bit smaller chuck. That'll allow me to come around a little bit further with my turret because it's bumping up against the jaws. I'd forgotten about that. So next time I'm just going to give this a quick sand and then I'll part it off. But when I sand a sphere, I tend to do it diagonally. It helps me keep the sphere shape. I know I could use kind of a donut end of a pipe that's round, and that would work well too, but this is just a little easier and I'm not worried about that kind of precision. Let's check with the calipers, see how we're doing as far as dimensions here. .2949, .2948. I guess that's close enough to round. While it's still on the lathe, I thought I'd go ahead and put on some walnut oil with wax. It's the doctor's workshop stuff. It's just easier to apply while it's still on the lathe. I can slather it up and let it kind of soak in a second. Okay, let that rest a few minutes and then I'll kind of wipe it off. Have a dry paper towel, spend about 3 or 4 minutes. Use it like a friction polish. Okay, I think that's good. And I think I'll just go ahead and part it off now. I epoxied the piece of pipe in the ball. It's all ready to go. Now I just need to drill and tap it. I have my V-block here, and I have a hole in the dead center of it, so the way I center it is I bring the drill press down, put it in the hole, and then I bring my guide up to touch the block, and so now I can just lay the ball in there. I have it pretty much set up. I'll scoot this down, and I'm just going to clamp that in place. So I'm mainly going to hold it with my hand. Ready to go. I forgot to turn the speed down. If I cut metal, it's got to be a much slower speed. Hang on, I'll do that. Okay, speed is set. Now we're ready to go. Okay, now we're down to the metal insert. Gently. There, you see some metal coming up. Okay, that part's done. I put my 5/16 18 tap in the drill press, and I'm pushing gently down on the handle. I'm just going to rotate it by hand. Okay, I think we have it, and instead of trying to back it out in the drill press, I'll just release the tap, and I'll just use a wrench to take the tap out. Let's review what we have done. We took the plate off of the biscuit joiner, used the holes as a template to drill some holes. Okay, we went ahead and made a hollow in this one. I also hollowed this a little bit, or a lot. I did it on both sides to give me a little more clearance and movement. Drilled 2 holes so that we can put this together, to hold it together like that. And we have our ball, fits on our post. Put our ball in there. Tighten it up. Take our knob. The only thing I haven't done is to show you how I made my knob. I'm not sure I'm going to do that. Knob just fits in there like so. And that tightens everything up. And that's all there is. It's quite basic. I'll put it together off camera. Okay, fully assembled, ready to operate. Just a quick review of what we have here. There's the knob to tighten, and then oh, I forgot to put my ball in there. Oh, why didn't you tell me I could have used a baseball and drilled a hole in it and just epoxied a wooden post in it? That would have been so much easier, wouldn't it? Gosh, I think that would work just fine. At the end of the project, I have 2 important takeaways for myself personally. With an 1 3/4 inch separation between the 2 sandwiching plywood pieces versus a 1/2 inch separation is important for this reason. with a 1/2 inch, my range of motion off of, this would be vertical, my range of motion off vertical is not very much. I mean, yes, I do have almost 180 degrees of range of motion, but this direction is very limiting. This being vertical with the 1 3/4 separation, I have a range of motion 45 degrees off of vertical, either direction, which is important to know. The other big takeaway I had was the realization that if I cut away a slot so that the post can pass all the way through, that greatly increases my range of motion and makes it so that a single post will work just great for me. Thank you for watching.